cameras off and mute yourself. We will have time for questions at the end. If you have a question, please send it directly to Carrie Jones in the chat box at the bottom of your screen. Dr. John Stubblefield is the CEO of Stubblefield Leadership. He is an expert in the field of educational and sports leadership. He's an energetic leader and an exceptional communicator with more than 20 years of experience in coaching and education. John builds positive relationships and fosters a collaborative culture while seeking to equip, empower, and encourage team members to achieve their personal best. Here at NCYSA, we've had the honor of having John serve as a valuable member of our North Carolina ODP coaching staff for several years now. Stubblefield Leadership is committed to helping teachers, coaches, and administrators build effective teams to maximize the potential of every member of their organization. Dr. Stubblefield will share his contact information at the end, as he is available and willing to come in and present to your association on a variety of related topics. Dr. Stubblefield, we are extremely excited today to touch on parent engagement and how important that is in what we do as coaches and administrators in the soccer world. So whenever you're ready, take it away.
All right, thank you so much. Everybody would just bear with me a second. I'm going to share my screen. And hopefully everybody is now seeing the PowerPoint that we have up here. So I really appreciate everybody coming on the call today or on the Zoom meeting. I want to thank Jamie for the kind introduction and Bill and Carrie for providing me with the opportunity to speak today. It's great to see so many familiar names. I would say faces, but see so many familiar names in the list of attendees. And I just want to thank all the coaches, the DOCs, the other guests who are joining us. I know in the past few months, we probably all had enough Zoom meetings to last a lifetime. So I appreciate you taking the time to be with us here today. So as we look at what we're talking about today and kind of who I am, what my background is. Currently, as Jamie said, I'm work with Stubblefield Leadership. It's a company that I started mainly as a way to be a placeholder for some of the ideas and intellectual property. But I'm also, my kind of day-to-day is I'm an administrator at Forsyth Country Day School. I'm also a staff coach with NCYSA, and I've worked with other clubs in the state, but that's more of the what I do. The who I am and how I want to be perceived by my players is I'm a dad. I want to be perceived as a mentor, someone, if you look at the definition of a mentor, it's someone who has gone before, who has experience, and they're leading others in that same path. I want to be a visionary, someone who sees the potential in others. I want to see the potential in the players that I coach and the teams that I work with and the coaches that I work with and help them achieve their full potential. I believe every coach ultimately communicates, either intentionally or unintentionally, their view of themselves to their players. And so my experience has always been the best coaches choose to be more intentional in how they communicate that. But that's enough about me. We came today here together to talk about parents and how to increase engagement between coaches and parents. And so when we think about that topic, think of dealing with the parents. And if we were all together, I would ask everybody, like, how many of you have ever said the phrase, I've got to deal with the parents? And I think we all know the lines. I can't believe I have to deal with these parents. I have to go make a phone call or send an email to deal with the parents. The how's your season going? Good. Just, having to deal with the parents. My favorite question is the one I sometimes get from parents who are asking, I don't know how you deal with these parents. And often the ones asking that question are the same parents that are, causing you to pull your hair out at night and giving you grief. And I will admit that I've probably said each of these statements and hundreds more like them, especially early in my coaching career. And then something changed. I used to have this mindset that we, the coaches and players, we'd all be okay if we just didn't have to, deal with the parents. If we could coach in a parental-free vacuum, everything would be great. We would win every game. No one would be upset about playing time. It would be like coaching nirvana. And then, like I said, for me, something changed. There was this, kind of one transformational event that changed my perspective forever. And sure, I attended some great coaching courses and had some excellent coaching mentors. But the one thing that changed everything for me was when I became a dad. And this is a picture of my two kids. This is a couple of years ago. It's actually my son's birthday today. He just turned 8. But, typically if we were together, I would ask everybody in the room, how many of you are parents? And I'm sure we've got a lot of parents on the call today, but, I had always been told that being a parent changes everything. And I think once you go from not being a parent to being a parent, you realize how profound that statement truly is. I mean, sure, being a parent means that you agree to forego sleep for the rest of your life, and you find yourself uttering phrases like, clean up your room so I don't step on Godzilla. I actually caught myself saying that statement to my son a couple of months ago, as he has a toy Godzilla, which of course is black, so it, in the dark you can't see it, and the bike in the back of it's full of spikes, worse than Legos. But these types of changes, while sometimes unexpected, are a given. You know that certain things are going to happen when you become a parent. But for me, the real change came when I had to sit across the other side of the field, and you watch your kids struggle, or when your kid gets in the car and they're crying because they don't think they're good enough. When for the first time, if you've always been a coach, you're sitting on the other side of the field, and any semblance of controlling the game or the experience for your child is largely gone. And you begin to realize how much you depend on the coach to make that experience what you want for your kid, for your child. And so being a parent changes your perspective. It changes the way you see everything. And what I'm going to ask everybody in the room today is that I could get one favor from all the coaches. And that would be if all the coaches would be willing to change your perspective about me, about us, the so-called the crazy parents. And so as we really dive into our topic, this profound realization that I had, once I had this change of perspective, I had this almost like an epiphany moment. And, we as coaches and parents, we are all on the same team. Now, stay with me for a moment. I can kind of feel the virtual eye rolls in the room, but I want to ask everybody a question. What do coaches want for their players? What would be your goals for the players on your team? And if we were together in person, I would ask people to kind of offer different opinions or suggestions. But when I've done this with various groups, they almost always say things like, well, I want my players to have fun. I want them to enjoy the game. Well, I want my players to develop good character. I want them to be, hardworking, dependable, take personal responsibility. Or I want the players to develop strong relationships, to make friendships that would last a lifetime. Or I want them to be able to maximize their individual talents. And that will look different for every kid, but to be the best that they can be. And you see that the profound realization that I had is that ultimately, we want to see our players, like I said, develop their individual talents, build good character, enjoy the experience. And parents want the exact same things. And parents need coaches to help them achieve those things for their kids. I remember I took my daughter, she's 10, and I took her to a practice when she was about 6 or 7. And this was when we lived in Columbus, Ohio for a little bit. And so it was a large indoor facility, and they had these, think of like a large glass wall with a door, and parents had to stay behind the glass wall, and the kids could go inside the indoor facility. And so we're standing there waiting for the next session to start. And a couple of the coaches, guys that I coach with, guys that I'd played with, are off to the side juggling the ball. And my daughter looks at all of them, and she looks back at me and she goes, "Daddy, my coach is so good." And I was like, well honey, like I coach with those guys. Like what they're doing, I can do. Like I can teach you all of that. And she looked back at me and just shook her head and she goes, "No, Daddy, my coach is so good." And it was kind of that moment where I realized I need the coaches to do things that I can't do. I have a lot of influences as a dad, but I need coaches to help me develop these things in my kids, in my child. And so in reality, coaches are in a partnership with parents. We, the parents and the coaches, we have the same goals. We share the same ultimate destination. We're trying to take the kids to the same point. And so as partners, we have to find ways to engage parents rather than avoiding, ignoring, or disparaging them. And so then the question comes, well, okay, if we're in this partnership, why is there so much conflict with parents? Why do we need to have meetings like this today? And I think the answer to that is what causes the conflict between coaches and parents is this idea that the parents are only hearing one side of the story. That the conflict between coaches and parents is the result of parents hearing a very different story than what the coaches may be telling. And so, I first learned this lesson when I was a school administrator. So I was in the classroom for 16 years, and then I became a school administrator and held various different administrative positions. And so one day I had a high school student who was struggling academically in a class. And his parents were upset, and they had contacted the teacher, and they were frustrated with the teacher, and they reached out to me. And so I just said, look, we're going to bring everybody together and sit everybody down. And those of you that are DOCs, I think you can relate to this story. There's a lot of similarity and parallels between being a school administrator and being a director of coaching. And so I scheduled the meeting. Mom, dad, the student, the teacher, they all come in. And the teacher explains the student's grade is low because of the large number of missing assignments. And at this statement, the mom rolled her eyes. She became almost incredulous. She scoffed, I don't understand. I know my son has done these assignments. I've helped him with his homework. I've watched him put his homework in his book bag before he goes to school in the morning. And she's blaming the teacher for all of this. And so as the conversation continued, I finally looked at the student and I said, can you help me out here? Your mom's saying you're doing your homework and it's in your book bag. And the teacher's saying he's not getting the assignments. What's going on? I don't understand. And at this point, the student finally admitted that while, in fact, he had done his homework and he had brought the homework to school in his book bag, he didn't always bring those assignments to class. In fact, his locker was stuffed with missing assignments. And I'll never forget the look on the dad's face as he looked at me and then looked over at his son. He goes, I think I understand what's going on here. Thank you for your time. We'll take care of this situation at home. And they left. And you see, I tell that story to illustrate this point. Without an alternative narrative, most parents believe the only story they hear. The kid gets in the car or it's home later and says, oh, the coach just hates me. They don't like me. Or they say, well, Jimmy is always late to practice and they still start. Or they may say, well, I don't know why I don't get any more playing time. Coach never tells me what I need to work on. Whoops, I'm sorry, we jumped ahead too much. And so, the solution to this then is for coaches to be able to tell their story. And so when we look at this, how can we tell our story? So as a coach, you have to fill that information vacuum with your own messages, or it's going to be filled with messages that you can't control. So you either are going to be proactive and do work ahead of time and continue to be intentional about your messaging and your communication with parents to make sure that your story is being told, in addition to whatever your players are telling mom and dad when they get in the car or when they get home later. And so today I wanted to share with you 4 ways that you can tell your story. And so we'll go into each of these in a little bit more details, but these are 4 ways to tell your story, listen, and then to ultimately engage with parents. Number 1 is preseason parent surveys. The second one is weekly emails. And then the third is invite parents to hear your post-game comments. And then finally would be player evaluations. So as we kind of look through these, parent surveys. I found this to be a very helpful exercise, and you can send it out through a Google form. You can do it in a preseason parent meeting and give everybody note cards. There's a variety of ways to do this, but ask parents for their opinions. If you're partners with those parents, it makes sense to ask them for their feedback, to ask them for their opinion and what they're hearing and what they would like the season to be. So the first question I like to ask parents is, share an individual goal for their child and the team. So what's one goal for your kid, your player, and what's one goal for the team? And this gives you great insight into where the parents are coming from. You know, is their goal like, we want to win state championships and I want my kid to be the MVP? Or is it something different? Next would be, describe the experience they would like for their child to have, even if those goals could not be achieved. And I love this one because it takes you from that, okay, almost transactional, we're paying for our kid to be in this program and we want these things and this is what we want to see happen, to what experience would you like your kid to have? And some of the goals that they may list may not really be controllable. Winning a state championship, while a worthy goal, is something that coaches and players can't always control. But we do have greater control over the experience. The third thing is, describe what they would like their experience to be like as a parent. And this forces them to think about things in a different way. What would you like your experience as a mom or dad to be like on this team? And then the next one, as we continue, is to ask parents, this is the final question I usually ask, what they can or will do to help foster the environment necessary to help achieve their goals and ensure a positive experience for all players and parents. So essentially what you're doing is you are asking the parents as a partner, we buy into, we're in partnership with parents, as a partner, how are you going to help? What can you do to create the environment that will help achieve the goals and help achieve a positive experience for your kids? And I have talked to a lot of coaches for a while. I've served as athletic directors in different schools, and we have done these kind of activities with parents. And coaches almost always come back and say, this has been so helpful. It helps me gain insight into where different parents are coming from. It helps me frame conversations with those parents as the season goes on. It just gives you insight into what the parents are thinking. The next item we talked about was weekly emails and then post-game talks. So weekly emails, just a couple of quick points. I've always sent, and when I was an athletic director at DOC, I required coaches to do this as well, to send a weekly email to all of their families, either Sunday evening or first thing Monday morning. And just a couple of quick points. It doesn't need to be a huge long email, because if it's too long, parents won't read it. But just, what are you seeing in the games? What are you seeing in the games and at training from the last week that will then impact the focus of this week's training? So it could be, this weekend we saw this and this, and as a result, we're going to be working on these things at training. Next is a reminder of the upcoming schedule, practice schedule for the week, and the game schedule for the weekend. And even though the schedules are posted online, you probably have them in 100 different places for parents to find. We're busy. Those of you that are parents know schedules are crazy. And to get that quick reminders, oh yeah, practice is here this week and we've got this, it is so helpful. Weekly emails can be the one intentional form of communication that 20 or 30 minutes putting that message together can save you 2 or 3 hours during the week and untold amounts of time during the season. Just a simple touch point with mom and dad. Next is the post-game talks. Invite the parents to listen to your post-game talk. And once again, hold off on the eye rolls. For a while, I lived in Columbus, Ohio. So I'm from this area, coached here for a long time, but my wife is from the Columbus area. And so in 2015, we moved there for 3 years. And I worked with Ohio South and on state staff for their ODP program. And we were at a regional event just outside of St. Louis, Missouri. And as part of the ODP program for Ohio South, we were required at this event to have parents attend all the post-game talks. And let's just say that some of you may be now, I was skeptical. But after our first game, the players come off the field and we shook hands with the other team. I'm sure you guys all remember the time when we could actually shake hands with people. And we told the players, myself and the other coach, hey, grab your stuff, walk across the field. We're going to have our talk over there. So we head across the field, get just off the field in one of the corners, invite the parents to come in. And we had explained before, parents, you come stand behind the players. You can listen, but you cannot offer any comments. So the parents come in and they stand behind the players, and we gave our normal post-game talk to the team. Things that we did well in the game, areas that we would like to see improvement, and what time they need to be back on the field for the next game. And then we thanked the parents. It would have kind of been awkward and weird because they're standing right there if we didn't say something to them. So we thanked them quickly, dismissed the kids. And a few minutes later, as everyone's walking to their car, a dad stopped me. Now, I'm sure you know all the thoughts that were running through my head. You know, what's he want? Is this going to be complaining? Is he upset about playing time? You know, it's hot. I just want to get a 30-minute break before I've got to be out in the field for my next game. You know, all those things are running through my mind. And instead of any of those things, the dad goes, "Hey, coach, it makes sense now." And I said, "I'm sorry, what makes sense?" He goes, "Well, after hearing what you were telling the kids, and after hearing you and the other coaches do the post-game talk, I now understand what you're trying to get the players to do during the game. It makes sense." And to make a long story short, that one event changed the way he responded on the sidelines during the following games. And so that was kind of a light bulb moment for me. You know, this is a partnership. We, the coaches and parents, if we can be on the same page, we have the same goals, but if we can communicate more and be on the same page, it's going to be a better experience for the kids. The next thing on their ways to tell your story is player evaluations. I like to do a mid-season evaluation. This is one of the things that was, once again, a requirement when I was serving as an athletic director. It's something I do with teams I coach. I coach the varsity, one of the varsity soccer teams here at Forsyth Country Day School, but our mid-season eval is just a simple sheet. We actually create it in like PowerPoint, and it's got 2 or 3 things that the player does well. Just here are 2 or 3 things you're doing really well up to this point in the season. Some of it could be technical work, some of it could be tactical, it may be attitude related, but 2 or 3 things they're doing well. And then 2 specific ways to improve. And with these, try to be specific. In the next half of the season, I would really like to see you whatever. And so that helps players. It helps them to understand what you're seeing. It helps them to understand where you're coming from. It helps that communication with mom and dad. That statement I put on one of the earlier slides is, "I don't know why I'm not getting playing time. Coach doesn't tell me." Well, you're telling them. It solves kind of that communication problem. I've had this simple thing. It takes typically like an hour or 2 on a weekend to put these together on an afternoon. That time invested opens up deeper conversations with the players, and there's so many positives that come out of it. Then the other thing is end of season evals. And the end of season evals, that's where it's going to be more comprehensive. You know, this is where you might get into the technical, the tactical, the physical, psychological aspects of the game. It's also an opportunity to set goals. Remember that first slide, I said I kind of see myself almost as a visionary. Not that I have some grand strategic plan for everything, but I want to be a visionary for the kids I coach, to cast a vision of what the future could be for them, of what would realistic goals be for their future development. Now, a lot of you may be saying, well these things are great. You know, these are great ideas. These are some tangible things I could do. But what about that crazy parent? What about the conflict? Like how do you handle those moments? And so I wanted to quickly talk today about just a couple of strategies for handling conflict. And the first thing I have is when conflict does occur, and I say when it occurs, because conflict is inevitable. You can't take things personally. One thing I always share with coaches is coaching should never be about you. It's always about the players. And so if it becomes about you and your ego and, well, they can't treat me this way and they can't say that about me. And granted, if they say something that's crossing lines, there are times to handle those types of things. But for the most part, it's not about you. And you kind of have to learn to put your ego aside and just sometimes listen and not take it personally. And I realize that's easier said than done. The next thing is, do not respond to emails after 9 or 10 p.m. I encourage coaches and when I've been an AD or a DOC, required a 24-hour rule where I tell parents, after a game, we're not going to talk about the game for 24 hours. We're going to take some time to cool off. And I share with them a research study that was actually done in France where they put heart rate monitors on the fans. And what they found is that as the game progressed, that the fans actually had a physiological response, a physical response to the ebbs and flows of the game. And if it was a tense game or a hard-fought competition, the stress levels and the heart rate of the fans went up. The same thing happens with parents. I don't think that's a stretch for any of us to believe. If you walk down the sidelines at some youth soccer events, and you can see that physical response from the parents. And so right after the game is never a good time. But I also think late at night is never a good time either. So if possible, put your phone away. Put it on do not disturb. Don't even check your messages unless it's a situation where you've got a player that was injured or there's a weather situation, or there are always exceptions. But for the most part, put the phone away. When you're tired, you are guaranteed not to make the best decision. And if you do choose to write that email at 1 o'clock in the morning to respond to the parent email that was written at 12:30, don't send it till the next day. You can write it, but put it away, save it as a draft, look at it in the morning, and I guarantee you your perspective will have changed. Another way to respond to conflict or how to handle conflict is the longer the email, the shorter the response. This was a piece of advice that I was given by a school administrator. And, I'm sure you've all been there as a coach, and I've gotten them as a teacher, as a school administrator, emails that go on for pages. And then you spend 30, 40 minutes, maybe an hour crafting some response back, and you're trying to respond to every single point they bring up. And usually they're full of misinformation and all these different things. And inevitably that never works. And so, like I said, I had a mentor who told me one time, he said, my rule of thumb is the longer the email I receive, the shorter my response. I thank them for their passion. I thank them for supporting the program. I offer to meet with them to engage and discuss things rather than trading emails. Now, my experience in doing this has been fantastic. For the most part, I would say that 85 to 90% of the time, parents do not want to meet. They may give you a phone call and you can set up a time for a call and discuss things, but the vast majority of the time, they're not wanting to meet. Often those emails were sent off in the heat of the moment, and when they step back and read through it again, they realize, oh, I probably could have said that in a little bit better way, a little bit better manner. And so they pull back. And rather than responding in the same manner with this long diatribe email back to them, countering them at every point, you've diffused that situation. You've thanked them for their support and their passion of the program or for their kid, and you've offered to meet and discuss things. This also works great if you have parents who will say things like, well, all the parents are talking about, or well, all the parents are saying. And my response in those conversations is I typically say, well, I appreciate you sharing that feedback. Would you please be willing to share with me the names of the other parents who have the same point of view? Because, I would like to talk with them individually, just like I'm talking with you. And so if you could just please let me know, who are some of all the other parents, and I'm going to reach out to them right now. I have never once had a parent give me a list of other names. And so it's a great little tactic, a little tip that you can use to kind of diffuse situations and then be able to have a conversation. Remember, it is a partnership. And I tell this to teachers as a school administrator. I've shared the same thing with coaches. You are the expert. A teacher is the paid educational expert. So when mom or dad come in and they may be upset about something, often they just have a different perspective. Their perception of it is different. And so the teacher has to help them see, well, here's why we do these things from a child development and educational standpoint. The same thing can be true with coaches. well, here's why we're making this decision. Here's why we have practices structured this way. Here's why the game schedule is like this. And in those moments where you make a mistake, because we will all make mistakes, then admit it. The best thing you could do is admit it, take ownership of it, do it quickly, and move on. And I found that parents appreciate that. As any parent knows, we all make mistakes. I can't think of a parent that hasn't made a mistake probably today. I know I've made some already. And so parents, understand and get it when you say, that was my fault. I messed up. I got distracted. I kept the kids 15 minutes late at practice or whatever it might be. Then my final suggestion on conflict is control what you can control. I tell this to the players all the time. Like, hey guys, I tell my players, we can always control two things every day. Every time we step on the field, we can control how hard we work and we can control our attitude. It doesn't take skill. It doesn't take anything but the will to work hard and have a good attitude. And so we also tell the parents, like, tell the players, you can't control the referee. You can't control the weather. You can't control the fans. You can't control the other team. Focus on what you can control. And the same advice I give to coaches. Ultimately, you are not responsible for the actions and attitudes of other adults. You can do your best. You can do as much as you can. And at some point, there may come a time where you will have to agree to disagree. There may come a time with the parents really upset that you have to have that meeting with the DOC or someone else in the club. And then unfortunately, there are sometimes those conversations where you have to have, maybe this isn't the right team or the right club for your family. And those are difficult conversations to have, but my point I'm trying to make is ultimately you can only do so much, and you can't take responsibility for the actions and attitudes of other adults. Before we get to questions, just a couple of resources that I wanted to share with everybody. Changing the Game Project, so the website there is changingthegameproject.com. That is a great resource for articles. They have a podcast. You can get on their mailing list. There's a lot of good information there for coaches, parents. It can apply to any sport, but it specifically has a background in soccer. The article listed there, it was Stop Dealing with Parents and Start Engaging. It's a great article. The topics in that article have been taken from a different article that was written several years ago from another coach. And it was something that influenced me, especially with the parent surveys and that information I shared with you today. I think, like all coaches, we watch other people do a training session and we pick, I like that part, and I'm going to take this or that from some other coach and put it with something I know, and then we create something new. And so that's some of what I've done here today, built upon resources like this, but also my own experience in both coaching and in the classroom and teaching, and put this together. As Jamie shared at the beginning of the session, if you want more information, there's my email address. That's at the school here. That's my cell phone number. Feel free to reach out, to call, to text. I was serving as athletic director here for the past couple of years, and I'm in a new administrative position. And part of my role is I've been named leadership program director. And that's for things on campus, but also off campus. So if I could be of help speaking to a group of coaching directors or the coaches in your club or parents or anything like that, please reach out, give me a call. Like I said, I also have my own LLC with Stubblefield Leadership, but here to help and want to be of service for everybody. So that's the end of what I have today. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and then if anybody has any questions, I think Carrie, you were monitoring some of that.
Thank you very much, John. That was excellent. Very, very informative. Quick question, or just maybe a statement for everybody. We are recording this session, so the recording will be available up on our website. And then if John is comfortable with sharing the PDF of the slide deck, we can get that published for you all as well. But to get to some of our questions, John, is there value to having a preseason meeting with your parents to share your story as a coach?
I think so. Yeah, it's something that I always do. And I think it's important to talk about, like we said at the beginning, who you are, not just what you do and a list of all the experiences, because, you know, I could go before parents and say, well, I've coached a little bit of college soccer, and I've coached ODP, and I've coached high school and club and all these different things. And while some parents will be impressed by that, and I could list off coaching licenses and diplomas and all those things, at the end of the day, the parents are like, oh, okay, that's great, but how are you going to interact with my kid? You know, what's your philosophy on, you know, how you coach, how you talk to the kids, how you work through difficulties? What do you feel about playing time and winning versus player development? And so sharing your story makes things more personal for parents, and they can relate to you. And ultimately, that's the foundation for everything, is building that relationship between not only the players, but also you need to have a relationship with the parents. And anything you can do to do that, I think, is beneficial. I was listening to a coaching podcast earlier this week, and they were encouraging coaches and challenging coaches, get to know the names of every parent on your team. And that's something that was kind of convicting to me, because I was like, oh, I don't know that I know the name of every parent. It's like, well, that's Sally's dad, but I can't remember his name. They talk about what a change and just a relationship in the atmosphere. When you see them walking up to the field, you can call them by name. And those little things add up to big changes in the environment and the mood around the team.
That's very interesting. And I agree. I think the not leaving parents in the dark and giving them some sort of feeling of empowerment and inclusion, I think will go a long way in dealing with problems on the other end. Doing that up front is a good idea. Do you suggest allowing players to offer their opinion on what they are doing well or areas they'd like to improve when you have individual player meetings? And if you do have these individual player meetings, do you invite parents to attend them, or would you suggest inviting parents to attend them?
Yeah, so a couple of things there. I do, if I do a mid-season eval, I will give that out to all the players and then try to sit down and meet with them. Sometimes for those, parents may or may not come. The end of season eval, I like to have the parents there. I like for them to hear what we're telling their player and hear what we're seeing. The other thing that I have done, and I haven't done it with every club team, I've done it with some, it works really well with high school teams, is I've given players a coaching notebook, and it just simply had one sheet for every game. And the sheet said broad kind of questions like, what did you do well today? Where's an area where you need to improve on from today? What did our team do well? What can our team improve on? And then a question about the opponent. What did the opponent do well today? You know, how did they play? So it gets them thinking about the game. And I would ask the players, you know, I've done it with club teams, and we go into a weekend, and these are older players. They're more, you know, older middle school to high school age kids. But, you know, take it, keep it. The next time we have practice on Tuesday, bring me your notebook. I kind of skim through those, and I can make little comments. And what I started noticing with the teams that I did that for, players would open up to me much more through that notebook than what they were comfortable telling me about their game. And what started to happen is I would occasionally make comments like, hey, you're doing really great here. Or, I'd like to see this from you next game, or different things. And if I started giving the notebooks back and I didn't make a comment, players would come to me and say, Coach, is something wrong? You didn't write anything in my notebook, even if it was just great game. I mean, it could be like 2 words. But what that told me was that communication, they were craving that. It meant the world to them just to get that type of feedback. So it's a great way, like I said, with older players who can, you know, you're teaching them to be a little bit more self-aware and to be reflective about their game and what their experience is and how they need to develop.
I like that. As a coach, when meeting with a crazy parent, should you have a DOC or administrator present?
Yes. Yeah. If you have any indication that that's not going to be just a typical meeting to discuss the player's development or something like that, that you think it might be contentious, have another coach or another adult in the room. I've been with a lot of clubs, but also at schools where we had that as a policy. In fact, a funny story, I had one teacher that sent me an email, and I was a dean of students at this school, and she said, I've got a meeting with his dad. I think he's really upset. Would you be able to come in the meeting? So I said, sure. After school, she had it set up. I walked down to her room. I'm sitting in the room with her. We've got some tables pulled out for the dad. The dad walks in the room. He sees me, turned around and walked away. And he's left. And so she finally went out and kind of talked to him and said, well, what's going on? He said, well, And he kind of got upset and ended up sending her email back because he just left. And he said, I didn't know you were going to have somebody else in the room. I don't want to talk about it with anybody else in the room. And so the subsequent conversation that we did have was much more calm. He came in angry, and if he one-on-one, he was just going to, let her have it. But then when there was another adult in the room, it caught him off guard. And those conversations tend to be more civil. And it keeps you out of the, well, they said this, no, they didn't, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, good advice. Is there value to walking across the field during a game to call down the parents or to help calm them down, who are shouting at children or referees?
I think it depends on the situation and where you are. I mean, I think there are some times where that is called for. And that's one of those things you can go over at your preseason parent meeting, like here are the expected behaviors of parents. And then if parents are wildly outside of that and it's out of control, I don't know that shouting across the field is the best thing, because then you're modeling the behavior you're asking them not to do. But walking over and say, hey, guys, we got to calm it down. And if you've got another coach, like if it's a club event and sometimes there's other coaches there that can help you with that, that can be a great resource too. Just having another coach, maybe not coaching that game, but works in the club, go stand on the parent sideline with the parents.
Yeah, we've seen that, like at State Cup too. It helps just to have somebody present. It helps to keep players calm, and parents calm too.
Yeah.
So I have one last question.
Sure.
As a volunteer training U10, which they say is sort of known as the golden age to learn, is 1 hour weekly to train kids enough, even though parents are looking for more? I guess the question maybe is that parents don't know it. They always want more from what a coach is giving. Is there value to explaining why sessions are as long as they are, or et cetera, or making them longer?
Yeah, I mean, I think you can look at there's some child development stuff out there about attention spans for kids and for children. But you can also just based on basic experience. I think that 8, 9, 10, if you're going over an hour and 15 minutes, you're probably starting to lose focus, or at least as you get toward the end of that, they need to be playing. And when I say playing, it not like 1v1, they should play more of like a game situation. It's kind of what I feel I've found works best. My son is 8 and my daughter's 10. And so I know, like with my 8-year-old, his attention span is really, really short. And if we don't keep them active and moving and every player has a ball and that kind of stuff, he will zone out, and it's not worth being out there. The 10-year-olds, older, a little bit more mature, a little bit more attention span, but also it depends on the kid and your team. You may have some teams that everybody's really gung-ho and they want to go 2-3 sessions a week, but then you've got kids like my daughter. She enjoys playing, but it's not her passion. So she's fine with once or twice a week. And so those things is kind of see where the team is, what level, where you're playing. And then maybe if there's kids that really want more, maybe you offer some optional things. I've done that with clubs in the past where, we have these practices that are required. And then one day a week we have option. If you're from these 3 or 4 teams that are kind of the same age group, come out to an extra session and jump in. And the kids that really want that and that are passionate about it, they'll come play.
That's good. And that maybe help the parents who are looking for that little bit extra, that their kids have an opportunity. So I have one last question for you. How can a coach sort out an issue if a parent comes to you and says that another parent is not behaving well on the sidelines? How would you handle that?
Yeah, so a couple of things when I talk with parents, and I never talk about other kids. So, and that's the same as a teacher, as a coach. I'll talk about your child all day long, but I'm not going to compare your child to someone else. And I'm not going to talk about the conversations I had with other adults. I think parents expect some sort of confidentiality with those kind of things. If it's behavior or something like that, that's public behavior. like if it's happening on the sideline, then it's public behavior, then having that heads up from a parent is helpful. I might try to see, you know, if I could verify that from somebody else. Don't want to start gossip, but at the same time, don't want to, you know, call somebody on the carpet for something that maybe is not true. But then if, you know, more than likely, if it's gotten to that point, you probably are aware of it as a coach or something else is going on. And you may need to have a conversation with that parent and say, you know, once again, back to the beginning of the year, here's the appropriate sideline behavior. We're seeing this. Other people are seeing this. We need to, you know, address this, you know, change the way you're behaving.
That's fair. And like you said, it goes back to setting that expectation in the beginning, which is super important. John, I think that is all of our questions today. Thank you so very much for your expertise and your knowledge and communicating well with us about this topic. Again, for everybody, we'll have a recording of this video up on our website in the next day or so, along with a copy of the slide deck. And then if you can get John's information from there, or if you need it, please feel free to reach out to myself or Jamie or Bill, and we can pass on his contact information if you're interested in connecting with him for your individual club. But thank you, John. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, guys. Thank you so much.
Everybody stay well and stay safe.
Thank you. Bye, guys.